It is not often that a man sees his own corpse. It is a sobering experience, but I am far less interested in my own corpse than I am in yours. Prepare yourself, vampire!
Throughout his long life, the vampire Kain has faced and defeated countless sorcerers, fanatical warrior priests, and demons. Yet there's one he's never bested, one he could not defeat in single combat without help. Indeed, Malek the Paladin proved to be quite the adversary for our fledgling protagonist. This shouldn't come as a surprise, given the character's troubled and brutal past. Malek's story begins far back in Nosgoth's early history, at a time when the land's vampire population had risen to levels that troubled the Circle of Nine. In response to the growing threat posed by the vampire race, the Circle's human guardians appointed a holy order to combat this perceived menace. Thus, the Sarafan Brotherhood were established to stamp out this plague. Having hunted and slaughtered quite a few vampires himself over the years, Malek was the obvious choice to serve as the head of this fanatical religious sect. Along with his elite warrior inquisitors, Malek led the Brotherhood to many victories. They massacred untold numbers of vampiric clans in what became known as the Great Vampire Purge. They were as ferocious as they were cold-blooded, never once stopping to consider the morality of their actions, even when they were butchering benign and passive individuals, similar to the likes of Janos Ordran. While there can be no doubt that Malek was a ruthless militant bastard, he can't shoulder all the blame for the Sarafans' crusades, because right to his death, he believed he was acting righteously. He was only ever trying to do his duty. Ironically, such unwavering loyalty to the Circle and to his cause is what ultimately led to his downfall. It turns out that Malek was in fact cruelly manipulated by the time streamer Moebius the whole time. He is submissive to the time streamer's commands, and is seen addressing him as Lord Moebius, despite the fact that they are both members of the Circle. The precise reason for Malek's subservience to Moebius in Soul Reaver 2, where they are depicted together, is left to the interpretation of the players. But I think it's because Malek and the other Guardians viewed both Moebius and Mortanius with a certain reverence. After all, those two were the first humans to rebel against their ancient vampire masters. Some fans have also speculated that Moebius apprenticed Malek when he was young in a calculated move to mould him into a dutiful pawn. Just like Kain, the human Malek might have been ignorant of his true role as a Pillar Guardian. It is likely no one ever told him of his true purpose, because he was more useful as an unquestioning servant of the Circle than as a thoughtful and inquisitive equal. Malek's position as the Conflict Guardian has certainly sparked debate among fans about whether he was recruited or born into the role. There is a common misconception in the Lock community that Malek became a Guardian of the Pillar of Conflict after he was fused to his armour, and it is understandable why some people would think this. According to official guides by Silicon Knights, developers of the original Blood Omen game, Malek became a Guardian by initially being recruited to protect the Circle, until eventually embodying the spirit of conflict, and thus becoming that pillar's representative in Nosgoth. This of course is ambiguous, and could potentially contradict what was established by Janos in Soul Reaver 2, namely that the pillars choose their guardians from birth. On that basis, it's impossible for Malek to have been appointed as a guardian. He had to have been born into the role. Although the official guides for Blood Omen and Malek's deferral to Moebius confuses the issue somewhat, I think we can safely say that Malek did serve as the Conflict Guardian from birth. This is evidenced by the events of Blood Omen's opening cinematic. Shortly after the Sarahfan Order won a resounding victory over the vampire race by torturing and eliminating the ancient Janos, the Order was in turn dealt a devastating blow to their leadership. The head Sarafan Inquisitors were murdered by the time-travelling wraith Raziel. At the very same time, the vampire Vorador launched a surprise attack, storming the Sarafan stronghold before slaying 6 of the Pillar Guardians who sponsored the vampire genocide. As their magics failed them, they screamed futilely for Malek, and when the Paladin finally arrived, he discovered he was too late to save them.
After slaughtering 6 of the sheep, I defeated their pathetic little shepherd, Malek. Since then, our kind has not bothered with the cattle, except to feed. And I suggest you do the same.
Soul Reaver 2 identified the roles of the 6 martyred guardians. With none of them representing the pillar of conflict, Malek had to be one of the 3 members of the circle that was spared, along with Moebius and Mortanius. It is clear that Malek's services were greatly valued by the circle up until the moment of his monumental failure. The murdered guardians placed too much faith in his skills, not that it would have mattered much, as Vorador promptly defeated Malek anyway. Despite losing to the vampire, Vorador spared the Paladin, leaving him to a fate worse than death.
For fulfilling the circle, Malek of the Sarafan, you are hereby damned. The pleasures of the flesh are no longer yours. You have but one purpose, damned warrior. You will serve us for eternity.
The Death Guardian Mortanius summoned Malek to stand trial for his delay, and persecuted him on the grounds that his vanity had led to the other members' deaths. Malek's soul is ripped out of his body and bonded to his armour. Purged of his life and freedom, he is condemned to spend the rest of eternity as an armoured wraith. You know, I love stories where major scenes are recontextualised, introducing new ideas that add more layers of complexity to the source material. Unbeknownst to Mortanius, Malek was punished in error. He never truly failed the circle in this moment, because his delay in reaching the other guardians was never his fault to begin with. The blame instead lies with Moebius. We learn much later on in Soul Reaver 2 that Moebius himself sabotaged Malek's noble aim to protect the circle, convincing him that the wraith Raziel was the true threat, all the while the others were being massacred. It's this kind of writing that makes Legacy of Kain so great, and speaks volumes of Amy Hennig's abilities as a writer. It's assumed that Mortanius never learned of Moebius's betrayal in this moment. He took his friend at his word, and placed all the blame on Malek, drawing his soul into his armour, whilst discarding what remained of his flesh. From this moment forward, Malek was condemned to serve the Circle of Nine as their unliving protector. Following his fall from grace, he blindly upholds his oath to defend the Circle's newest members, despite the fact that they hold him in low esteem.
So, Malek, have you come to fail the Circle once more? Leave, Paladin. I do not need your protection. Come, Kain. Come, share my pain.
Malek very much resents what he's turned into, and longs to find a way to restore the humanity that was taken from him. With the Sarafan leadership all but gone, the damned Paladin isolated himself in his Bastion in the north. The Sarahfan Order disbanded, and their story faded into legend. As the last of the Sarafan, Malek became increasingly obsessive, unhinged, and deranged. He began to experiment with melding the souls of long-dead warriors to armour in an effort to reproduce the spell Mortanius had cast upon him. Eventually he met with success by creating a number of magical machines to recycle the souls of the dead. Malek strived to create the perfect army, removing any emotion which could prove a hindrance, and programmed his new soldiers with the simple instruction to kill vampires. In the 500 years preceding the events of Blood Omen, Malek had continued to harbour intense feelings of hatred for Vorador. He was consumed by a lust for revenge, and sought to use his army to hunt down and destroy the vampire who humiliated him centuries ago. When the young Kain invaded Malek's Bastion, the Paladin put his little creations to the test, only to discover that they were being quickly defeated by a fledgling vampire. Without passion, fear, logic, or intuition, his soldiers were nothing more than mindless puppets, incapable of handling the surprise and unpredictability of battle. Truth be told, they couldn't hold a candle to the original Sarafan Order and proved useless fighting against a young vampire. Before confronting Malek, Kain would stumble upon a frozen skeleton, which according to the Paladin, is his own. Interestingly, Kain would go on to find another chained skeleton later during his journey in a darkened room within Avanas Cathedral, similar to the room where Moltanius condemned Malek to possess his suit of armour. To confuse matters, the official strategy guide for Blood Omen claims that both of these corpses belong to Malek. So what on earth is going on here? Well, there are two possibilities. Either Malek was mistaken as to the identity of the first corpse, which is feasible as he was crazy and the body was still clothed and retained some flesh, or it was his body and there's some time travel chicanery going on. While the connection between these two dead bodies remains unresolved, I should point out that we may have gotten an answer in the cancelled subsequent title. Screenshots of the unreleased Dark Prophecy game depict Kain traversing a snowy, mountainous fortress ornamented with the symbol of the Sarafan Brotherhood and defended by animated suits of armour. As it turns out, this location was in fact supposed to be Malek's Bastion revisited. Had Dark Prophecy been released, it would have been very interesting to see where the developers would have taken Malek's character here. Just maybe we would have gotten an answer to one of the more prominent questions left hanging at the end of the series. Going back to Kain's first skirmish with Malek, the young vampire held his own against the Paladin, but ultimately could not inflict any damage. The two opponents arrived at a stalemate, seemingly unable to destroy one another until Malek grew frustrated and attempted to bring the entire Bastion down with a powerful wall of energy. Thus Kain was forced to retreat and begrudgingly realised he could not defeat Malek through any conventional means. He needed help. Later on, when Kain travels to Dark Eden, he finds 3 of the corrupt guardians awaiting his arrival. While Bane the Druid and Dejoule the Energist appear eager to battle, Anarcrothe the Alchemist panics and summons Malek to his aid before teleporting to safety. In response, Kain summons Vorador to stand up to the Paladin as he pursues the other two.
Vengeance. Vengeance for my eternity of suffering.
Whelp! As if you knew what eternity was. Grovel before your true master!
Never. I'll hack you from crotch to gizzard and feed what's left to your brides.
After goading each other, they engage in battle, this time to the bitter end. And while Malek proved more formidable here, he was still no match for the old vampire. When Kain returned, he found only the scattered fragments of Malek's lifeless armour. In many ways, Malek's backstory shares striking similarities to Raziel's. Both were raised as highly capable Sarafan warriors, only to be cruelly manipulated. Then there's the fact that each of them suffered a terrible fate at the hands of those they trusted and respected. But where Malek remained a slave to his fanatical beliefs, Raziel questioned and challenged those who sought to use him. Raziel made many mistakes, but in the end he grew and learnt from his experiences. He understood that vampires were just another race occupying Nosgoth. They weren't a plague that needed to be wiped out. Malek, on the other hand, could never see past his hatred. He chose to remain ignorant and unenlightened, and it cost him everything. If you liked this video, do give me a thumbs up, and subscribe if you want to stick around for more. Also, let me know down in the comments what you think of Malek, particularly regarding theories surrounding his remains. I'm always interested to hear your thoughts. Stay brilliant, and I'll see you in the next video.